The research ship Explorer rocked gently on the waves of the Pacific Ocean. Dr. James Walker stood on the deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The morning sun glinted off the water, making it shimmer like diamonds. But James wasn't interested in what was above the water. His mind was focused on what lay beneath. "Dr. Walker, you should see this," called out Mike, his assistant. Mike had been working with the new quantum resonance scanner in the ship's lab. James hurried below deck. The lab was filled with computers and strange equipment. The centerpiece was the QR-5000, the newest and most powerful scanner for seeing under the ocean floor. It had cost millions to build, but today it would prove its worth. "Look at these readings," Mike said, pointing to a screen filled with colored patterns. "I've never seen anything like this before." James leaned closer. The screen showed a section of ocean floor about 2 miles below them. But instead of the usual rocky patterns, there were perfectly straight lines and sharp angles. "That can't be natural," James said, his heart beating faster. "Nature doesn't make perfect squares." "That's what I thought," Mike said. "And look at this." He pressed a few buttons, and the image zoomed out. The strange pattern wasn't just in one spot. It covered an area the size of a small city. "We need to get a better look," James said. "Prepare the deep-sea drone." An hour later, the team gathered around another screen. The drone was sending back live video as it descended into the dark waters. At first, there was nothing to see but endless blue. Then, as it got deeper, the water turned darker and darker until the drone's lights were the only source of brightness. "We're approaching the site," said Lisa, who was controlling the drone. 2,000 meters and going deeper. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Years of research, countless failed expeditions, and millions in funding had led to this moment. James held his breath as the ocean floor came into view. And there it was. "My God," whispered Mike. The drone's lights revealed a massive structure half buried in the silt. It was clearly not a rock formation. It had a sleek, curved shape, with what looked like windows along one side. It was a ship, but unlike any ship humans had ever built. "It's huge," said Lisa, "at least 200 meters long. And look at the material," James said, pointing to the hull. "It's not metal or wood. I've never seen anything like it." The outer shell had a faint blue-green color that seemed to glow slightly under the drone's lights. There were no signs of rust or decay despite being underwater for what must have been a very long time. "Take samples," James ordered. "We need to know what this thing is made of." The drone extended a mechanical arm and carefully scraped a small piece from the hull. The material came away easily, suggesting it wasn't as hard as metal. "Got it," Lisa said, bringing the drone back up. Later that day, James studied the sample in the ship's lab. The material was lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel. It contained elements that weren't on the periodic table. This wasn't just an unknown ship. It was made of unknown materials. "The carbon dating results are in," Mike said, entering the lab with a printout. "You're not going to believe this." James took the paper and read the numbers, then read them again. "This can't be right," he said. "Run the test again." 3 hours later, the results were the same. The ship was approximately 30,000 years old. That was impossible. Human civilization was only about 10,000 years old. The earliest known boat was a simple canoe dating back 8,000 years. This was something else entirely. "We need to call the university," James said. "And probably the government too." Within days, the discovery was all over the news. Most scientists were skeptical. They suggested errors in the testing or alternative explanations. Some even accused James of faking the whole thing. "They'll see soon enough," James told his team as they continued to map the site. "This is just the beginning." He was more right than he knew. 2 weeks after their initial discovery, similar readings came in from research vessels in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and even the Arctic. The patterns were all the same. Giant ships of unknown origin, all approximately 30,000 years old. James was in the middle of a video call with researchers from around the world when Mike burst into his cabin. "James, you need to see this now. The new scans covered a much larger area than before. What they showed was mind-blowing. The ships weren't scattered randomly. They formed a perfect circle around the Earth, like a giant net or web. There are millions of them, James said, his voice barely above a whisper, all deliberately placed. The implications were clear. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was the work of intelligent beings who had visited Earth long before humans had even learned to farm. "We're looking at the greatest discovery in human history," he told the shocked faces on his screen. "We're not alone in the universe." And we never were. That night, as the explorer floated above the ancient wreck, James stood on the deck again. This time he looked up at the stars instead of down at the ocean. Somewhere out there were the beings who had built these ships. Did they still exist? Would they return once they knew their ships had been found? The biggest question of all kept him awake that night. Why had they hidden their ships under the sea 30,000 years ago? And what would happen now that humans had found them? James didn't know the answers yet, but he was determined to find out. 3 months after the first discovery, the world had changed. Ships from every major country were scattered across the oceans, each searching for more of the ancient vessels. Dr. James Walker had become famous overnight. His face was on TV shows and magazines. People stopped him on the street for photos, but fame wasn't what James wanted. He wanted answers. "The United Nations has called for an emergency meeting," said Mike, reading from his tablet. They were back on land now, in a new research center built just for studying the ships. "All the major powers are fighting over who gets to keep what they find." James shook his head. "These ships don't belong to any country. They belong to everyone, to all of humanity." "Try telling that to the military," Mike replied. "The U.S. Navy took control of our first site last week. It wasn't just the American military that was interested. Russia, China, the European Union, everyone wanted the technology inside those ships. Whatever civilization had built them was thousands of years ahead of current human technology." "Dr. Walker," a woman's voice called from across the room. It was Anna Reed, a brilliant engineer who had joined their team after the discovery went public. "I found something important." James and Mike walked over to her workstation. She had been working on improving the scanning technology to see deeper into the ocean floor. "I modified the quantum resonance scanner," she explained. "I doubled its power and changed how it processes the data." "And?" James asked. She pulled up an image on her screen. It showed the entire Pacific Ocean, but with thousands of bright dots spread across it. "Each dot is a ship," she said. "There are more of them than we thought. Many, many more." James stared at the screen in amazement. "How many are we talking?" "About millions," Anna said. "And that's just in the Pacific. I'm getting similar readings from the other oceans." She pressed a button and the view expanded to show the whole Earth. It was covered in dots like stars in the night sky. But something else caught James's attention. "They're not random," he said, pointing to patterns in the arrangement. "Look at this. They form shapes like letters or symbols." The team spent the next week analyzing the patterns. The ships weren't just scattered around. They were deliberately placed to form a massive pattern that covered the entire planet. "It's like someone writing a message on the Earth itself," Anna said. "But who was supposed to read it and why hide it under the ocean?" Their work was interrupted when a military officer entered the lab. "Dr. Walker, I'm Colonel Davis. I need you to come with me." "Why?" James asked. "National security," the colonel replied. "We found something you need to see." James was flown to a secret military base in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was built on a small island surrounded by warships. In the center of the base was a massive hangar. "We recovered this 3 days ago," Colonel Davis said as they entered the hangar. Inside was a section of one of the ships. It was about 50 feet long and glowed with a faint blue light. Dozens of scientists in white lab coats were studying it. "We managed to cut this piece off and bring it to the surface," the colonel explained. "It wasn't easy. The material is harder than diamond once it's out of water." James approached the ship section carefully. Up close, he could see patterns etched into its surface, symbols that looked like writing. Have you been inside it? He asked. The colonel nodded. There's a door on the other side, follow me. The inside of the ship was even more amazing than the outside. The walls were lined with what looked like control panels, but with no buttons or screens, just smooth surfaces. With more symbols, the air was strangely fresh, as if the ship was still alive somehow. We found these, the colonel said, pointing to a row of small, crystal-like objects on a table. They seemed to be some kind of data storage. James picked one up. It was warm, to the touch, and seemed to pulse slightly like a heartbeat. Have you been able to read them? No, the colonel admitted. That's why we brought you here. For the next 2 weeks, James worked with the military scientists to understand the crystals. They tried everything, X-rays, lasers, computers, but nothing worked until Anna had another breakthrough. The ships weren't sunken by accident, she told James during a video call. They were deliberately hidden. How do you know that? James asked. I've been studying the patterns, she said. The way they're arranged, the depth they're buried, it's all too perfect. Someone put them there on purpose. But why? James wondered. To hide them from someone, Anna suggested. Or to wait for something to happen. The next day, one of the military scientists made a discovery. When exposed to a specific frequency of sound, the crystal data storage units lit up and projected symbols into the air. It's like a hologram, James said, watching the floating symbols with awe. But we still can't read it. They needed a linguist, someone who could decipher the alien language. Thomas Ford was the best in the world, having created programs that translated ancient human languages never before understood. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, Thomas said after studying the symbols for a week. But there are patterns, just like in human languages. Give me time. Time was something they might not have. Another ship, this one in the Indian Ocean, had started to move. After 30,000 years of sitting silently on the ocean floor, it was waking up. Something triggered it, Anna told James. Maybe it was our scans or the piece you removed. Or maybe, James said, a chill running down his spine. It was programmed to wake up at this specific time. Maybe whoever put these ships here is coming. Back. As if to confirm his fears, all the ships around the world began to pulse with light, sending signals up through the water toward the stars. The global hunt for answers had taken an unexpected turn. Now humanity wasn't just looking for ancient history. They were preparing for possible first contact. And as James looked at the data coming in from around the world, one thing became clear. The ships hadn't been hidden under the sea by accident. They had been waiting. For 30,000 years they had been waiting, and now the wait was over. Thomas Ford hadn't slept in 3 days. The linguist's office was filled with papers covered in strange symbols, copies of the alien writing found on the ships. Cups of cold coffee sat forgotten on every surface. His eyes were red from staring at screens for too long. But his tired face broke into a smile as Dr. James Walker entered the room. I've got it, Thomas said, his voice hoarse but excited. Or at least I've got the basics. James couldn't believe it. You can read their language? How? It's not as alien as we thought, Thomas explained, pulling up images on his computer. All languages have patterns. This one uses a system based on mathematics, specifically prime numbers. Once I figured that out, the rest started to make sense. He showed James a series of symbols and their translations. This means star, Thomas said, pointing to one symbol. This means ship, and this... He paused, pointing to a complex pattern. This means human. James stared at the symbol. They knew about us 30,000 years ago? Thomas nodded. According to what I've translated so far, they called themselves the Guardians. They were an advanced civilization that traveled between stars. They visited Earth during the last ice age. Over the next few hours, Thomas explained what he had learned. The Guardians had found Earth while exploring this part of the galaxy. They discovered early humans, primitive but with potential. They watched as our ancestors hunted, made tools, and painted on cave walls. But they were worried about us, Thomas said. The records mention our aggressive nature and territorial instincts. They saw how we fought each other over resources. So they left? James asked. Thomas shook his head. They were forced to leave. According to the translations, they were fleeing from some kind of disaster, something about a wave of darkness coming through the galaxy. And the ships? James asked. Why leave them here? They couldn't take everything with them, Thomas explained. So they hid their technology where primitive humans couldn't reach it, deep under the oceans. They planned to return one day when the danger had passed. But they never came back, James said. Thomas's face grew serious. That's the thing. I think they might be coming now. When we disturbed the first ship, it seems we activated some kind of beacon, a distress signal. As if to confirm his words, James's phone rang. It was Anna. James, you need to see this, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Turn on any news channel. James grabbed the remote and switched on the TV in Thomas's office. Every channel showed the same thing, a massive object in Earth's orbit. It wasn't a satellite or space station, it was a ship, identical in design to the ones under the oceans, but 100 times larger. It just appeared, Anna said over the phone. No warning. 1 minute there was nothing, then there was a flash of light, and there it was. The world was in panic. Military forces were on high alert. News reporters speculated wildly about invasion or the end of the world. But James felt something different, a strange sense of anticipation. After 30,000 years, the Guardians had returned. 3 days later, James, Thomas, Anna, and representatives from major world governments gathered at a military base. The alien ship had sent a message, in multiple human languages, including English, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. They wanted to meet. A smaller vessel had descended from the mothership and landed at the designated meeting point. As they waited for the doors to open, James wondered what the Guardians would look like. Would they be humanoid? Completely alien? Something in between? The ship's door slid open silently. Light poured out, temporarily blinding everyone. When James could see again, he gasped. The being that stepped out looked almost human, tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large, deep eyes. It wore simple clothing that seemed to shimmer and change colors slightly as it moved. "We are the Guardians," it said in perfect English, its voice melodic and calm. "We have returned as promised." The alien, who introduced himself as Keeper, was shocked to find humans had advanced so quickly. In their calculations, humanity should still be using basic tools and living in small settlements. "Your evolution has been unexpected," Keeper said as they sat in a conference room. "When we left, your kind used stone tools and had just discovered fire. Now you build machines that can think and have walked on your moon." "We're quick learners," James said with a small smile. But Keeper's next words wiped the smile from his face. "You must stop your excavations immediately," the alien said. "The ships were hidden for a reason." "What reason?" asked the American president, who was attending via video conference. "Your world was placed under quarantine," Keeper explained. "Your species showed great potential, but also concerning tendencies toward violence and destruction. The Council of Guardians decided to let you develop naturally, without interference. The ships contain technology you are not ready for." "Who are you to decide what we're ready for?" James asked, feeling a flash of anger. Keeper turned those deep eyes on him. "We have seen civilizations destroy themselves with technologies they weren't prepared to control. The ships contain weapons that could devastate not just your world, but entire star systems." The room fell silent as everyone took in this information. "But there's more," Keeper continued. "The ships were also hidden to protect you. If our enemies knew of your existence, they would come here and enslave your people, or worse." "Your enemies?" James asked. "The wave of darkness mentioned in your records?" Keeper looked surprised. "You've translated our language? Impressive." The alien nodded. "Yes, they call themselves the Harvesters. They consume worlds and the energy of living beings. We fought them for centuries before we were forced to flee to the far reaches of the galaxy." "Are they still out there?" Thomas asked. "Yes," Keeper said simply. And if they detect the energy signatures from our old ships, they will come here. That is why you must stop your excavations and return what you have found to the depths. The way. Human representatives looked at each other uncertain. Give up the greatest discovery in human history, return to being alone in the universe, ignorant of what lay beyond the stars? James stood up. No, he said firmly. We won't stop learning. We won't hide from the truth. If these harvesters are still a threat, then we need to prepare, not bury, our heads in the sand. Keeper's expression was unreadable. You speak bravely, but you don't understand the danger. Then help us understand, James replied. Teach us, work with us. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own wars. We're stronger than you think. For a long moment, Keeper said nothing. Then, to everyone's surprise, the alien's mouth curved into what might have been a smile. Perhaps, Keeper said, you have evolved further than we anticipated. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. 2 weeks after first contact, a special meeting was called. Representatives from all major countries gathered in a secure conference room at the United Nations building in New York. Keeper, the Guardian ambassador, sat at one end of the long table. Captain Mark Stone of the newly formed International Space Coalition sat at the other. The room was tense. Earlier that day, Keeper had delivered an ultimatum. Earth had 7 days to return all recovered artifacts to the sea and stop all research on the ships. If humans refused, the Guardians would take the artifacts by force. We understand your concern, Captain Stone began, his voice steady despite the pressure. But we cannot simply abandon this knowledge. It belongs to all of humanity now. Keeper's large eyes blinked slowly. You still do not understand the danger. The technology in those ships could destroy your civilization. Or it could help us advance by centuries, replied the representative from Japan. We have already learned how to create new materials based on the ship's hull. Materials that could help us build better homes, better hospitals, and better weapons, Keeper added. We have seen this pattern on 100 worlds. First come the medical advances, then the weapons. Mark leaned forward. With respect, you're judging us based on what we were 30,000 years ago. We've grown. We've learned. Yes, we still have wars and conflicts, but we also have art, music, literature. We explore not just to conquer, but to understand. Pretty words, said Keeper. But your actions tell a different story. Our scans show your militaries are already attempting to reverse engineer our propulsion systems. The room fell silent. It was true. We need to defend ourselves, said the Russian representative finally. You've told us about these harvesters. If they're as dangerous as you claim, shouldn't we be prepared? Keeper stood up. His 7-foot frame made everyone else look small. The harvesters would crush you like insects. Your most advanced weapons would be toys to them. The only way to survive is to remain hidden. Hide and hope they never find us, Mark asked. That's not the human way. Then perhaps the human way leads to extinction, Keeper replied coldly. The meeting ended without resolution. The ultimatum stood: 7 days to comply or face consequences. Back at the research facility, James, Anna, and Thomas worked frantically to understand as much as they could before the deadline. The Guardian ship is still in orbit, Anna said, looking at satellite feeds on her tablet. But 3 more have arrived in the last hour. James nodded grimly. They're preparing to take back their technology by force if necessary. Can we really fight them? Thomas asked. Their ships can travel between stars. Ours can barely reach the moon. We might not have to fight, James said, studying the crystal data storage unit in his hand. There's something not right about all this. Why hide millions of ships? Why not just take them when they left? And why did they look so much like us? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Helen Grant, a geneticist, burst into the lab waving a folder of papers. You need to see this, she said, spreading the papers on the table. I've been studying the DNA samples we found on the ships, comparing them to human DNA. James looked at the complex charts and graphs. What am I looking at? Similarities, Helen said excitedly. Too many similarities. The Guardian DNA and human DNA share 85% of the same markers. That's impossible unless we're related, James finished, his mind racing with the implications. Helen nodded. Either they evolved from us, or we evolved from them. Given the timeline, I'd say we're their descendants. The team stared at each other in shock. Humans were related to the Guardians. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right in front of them. We need to tell Captain Stone, James said. This changes everything. The next day, Mark Stone requested another meeting with Keeper. This time, only Mark, James, and a few key scientists attended. We've made a discovery, Mark said, pushing the genetic reports across the table. One that I think you already know about. Keeper looked at the papers but didn't touch them. His expression remained unreadable. We're related to you, aren't we? James asked directly. That's why you look so much like us. That's why you came to Earth in the first place. For a long moment, Keeper said nothing. Then he sighed, a very human gesture. Yes, he admitted. Your people are distant cousins to ours. We visited many worlds, seeding life where conditions were right. Earth was one such world, though your evolution took an unexpected path. You created us? Mark asked, stunned. No, Keeper said. We merely guided early development. Your species evolved on its own, much faster than we anticipated. When we returned, we expected to find primitive beings still learning to use tools. Instead, we found a spacefaring civilization on the verge of joining the galactic community. Is that why you want us to stay hidden? To protect us, James asked. Partly, Keeper replied. But also because we fear what you might become. You evolved to survive on a dangerous planet. You are more aggressive, more adaptive than we are. Your technology advances at a frightening pace. And you're afraid of us, Mark realized. Not just for us. Keeper's silence confirmed it. Listen to me, Mark said, his voice firm but respectful. We don't want to be your enemies. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. But we won't live in fear and we won't give up what we've learned. There must be a middle ground. There is no middle ground with the harvesters, Keeper warned. They will sense the energy from our ships and come to investigate. When they find you, humans with Guardian technology, they will destroy your entire planet. Then help us, James urged. Don't force us back into ignorance. Teach us to defend ourselves. You cannot, Keeper began, but was interrupted by an alarm from his wrist device. His blue skin paled visibly. It's too late, he said, reading the alien symbols on the device. A Harvester scout ship has entered your solar system. They detected the energy surge when you activated the first ship. The room erupted in panic. Questions flew from all sides. How much time did they have? What weapons would work against our harvesters? Should they evacuate major cities? Mark's voice cut through the chaos. How long until they reach Earth? 3 days, Keeper replied. Maybe 4. Mark looked around the room, at the faces of the scientists and leaders who now carried the fate of humanity on their shoulders. Then he turned back to Keeper. Then we have 3 days to prepare, he said calmly, and we'll need your help. For the first time since they'd met him, Keeper looked uncertain. You cannot win this fight. Maybe not, Mark agreed. But we will fight anyway. That's what humans do. The Guardian stared at Mark for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Perhaps, he said. That is why we were right to fear you. The next 3 days were the most frantic in human history. People around the world watched the skies with fear and wonder. Some panicked and fled to bunkers. Others gathered in churches, mosques, and temples to pray. But most did what humans had always done in the face of danger. They prepared to fight. At the underwater research base, now the command center for Earth's defense, James Walker worked alongside Anna, Thomas, and scientists from around the world. They had a desperate plan. The ancient weapons are our only hope, James told Captain Mark Stone as they stood in front of the largest piece of recovered ship. If we can activate them before the harvester reaches Earth orbit, we might have a chance. Can you make them work? Mark asked. Keeper says they were designed to respond only to Guardian DNA. James smiled. That's the one piece of good news we have. Remember, we share 85% of our DNA with the Guardians. Helen has been testing the systems with human DNA samples. Some of us can activate the technology. Some of us? Mark asked. People with a specific genetic marker, James explained. About 1 in 20 humans has it, a direct link to our Guardian ancestors. Helen calls it the star gene. Mark looked skeptical. And you have this gene? I do. James nodded. So does Anna. We've been testing the weapons systems all night. Across the room, Anna was working with a team to connect the ancient ship's power core to modern systems. The core glowed with blue-green light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The problem isn't making them work, James continued. It's understanding how to control them. These weapons are beyond anything we've ever seen. Keeper, who had been watching silently, stepped forward. I will help you, he said, surprising everyone in the room. The Council will not approve, but I cannot watch your species die when you fight with such courage. Over the next 48 hours, Keeper taught them how to use the Guardian weapons. The most powerful was something called a gravity lance, a weapon that could create a temporary black hole, powerful enough to tear apart even the largest ships. Be careful, Keeper warned as James practiced the control gestures. Too much power and you could damage your own planet. The weapons respond to emotion as well as command. Meanwhile, governments around the world prepared their conventional forces for all the good they would do. Fighter jets were armed and ready. Missile silos were opened. Nuclear submarines moved into position. They're brave, Keeper said, watching the military preparations on a monitor. But their weapons will do nothing against harvester shields. It's not about winning, Mark told him. It's about standing together, fighting together. The harvester ship entered Earth orbit exactly as Keeper had predicted. It was massive, at least 5 miles long, covered in jagged spines that made it look like a metal sea urchin. It blocked out the sun over North America, casting a shadow that chilled everyone who saw it. It's scanning us, Keeper said, reading the data on his wrist device. Looking for the Guardian energy signatures. When it finds the ships, it will attack. Then we attack first, Mark ordered. The plan was simple but dangerous. Using the gravity lance would require getting close to the harvester ship. James and Anna would pilot a modified spacecraft carrying the ancient weapon. Earth's military forces would provide a distraction. As they prepared to launch, Keeper approached James one last time. There is something you should know, the Guardian said quietly. The Council did not send me here to help you return the ships. They sent me to determine if humans were ready to join the galactic community. And what did you decide? James asked. Keeper's lips curved in that almost smile. I'm helping you fight the harvesters. What do you think I decided? The launch went smoothly. James and Anna piloted the craft toward the harvester ship, hiding in the shadow of Earth to avoid early detection. Behind them, the combined air forces of Earth's nations flew in formation, a display of unity never before seen in human history. They've spotted us, Anna said as alarms blared. The harvester ship was turning, its weapons ports opening like dark, hungry mouths. All forces engage, Mark ordered from the command center. The sky lit up with missiles and laser fire. The human weapons couldn't penetrate the harvester shields, but they served their purpose. Distraction. James and Anna flew directly at the massive alien ship, dodging energy beams that could vaporize mountains. We're in position, James reported. Activating gravity lance. He placed his hand on the ancient control panel. It glowed in response to his touch, recognizing the Guardian genes in his DNA. The ship hummed with power as the weapon charged, but something was wrong. It's not working properly, James said, panic rising in his voice. The targeting system won't lock on. They're shields, Keeper explained through the radio. The harvesters have adapted since our last encounter. Anna's face showed grim determination. Then we'll have to get closer, inside their shields. That's suicide, Keeper warned. Maybe, Anna replied, but it's our only chance. James nodded, and they pushed the engines to full power, flying straight at the harvester ship. Enemy fire blazed around them, some shots hitting their craft and damaging the outer hull. Shields at 30%, Anna reported. We won't survive another direct hit. They were close now, so close they could see the details of the alien hull, the strange patterns that covered its surface. Now! James shouted, activating the gravity lance again. This time the weapon responded fully. A beam of blue-white light shot from their ship, striking the harvester at point-blank range. For a moment nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a swirling vortex of darkness that began to tear the enemy ship apart. It's working, Anna cried, but our ship is being pulled in too. The gravity was too strong, drawing them toward the artificial black hole. Their engines strained against the pull but couldn't break free. Then, to their surprise, 3 Guardian ships appeared, firing tractor beams that locked onto their craft. The Council changed their mind. Keeper's voice came through the radio. They decided humans were worth saving after all. The Guardian ships pulled them to safety as the harvester vessel collapsed into the gravity well, crushed into nothingness. The temporary black hole winked out of existence, leaving only scattered debris. When James and Anna returned to Earth, they were greeted as heroes. The world had watched the battle through satellite feeds. Humans had stood together against an impossible threat, and won. 1 month later, a formal meeting was held at the United Nations. Keeper, now officially the Guardian ambassador to Earth, addressed the gathered leaders. For 30,000 years we watched your evolution from afar, he said. We feared you. We doubted you. We underestimated you. Today I am proud to announce that the Guardian Council has voted unanimously to end Earth's quarantine. Humanity is now recognized as a spacefaring civilization and invited to join the Galactic Alliance. As the room erupted in cheers and applause, James looked at Anna and smiled. The ships that had been hidden under the sea for 30,000 years had not just changed human history, they had opened the door to humanity's future among the stars. And as the celebration continued around them, James couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might be waiting to be discovered, now that humanity had taken its first real steps into the vast unknown universe. The massive window in Commander Jack Reed's office showed the endless stars of the Orion Arm. 200 years had passed since humans could fight in space wars. Jack looked at the metal box on his desk. It belonged to his great-grandfather, one of the last human soldiers to fight in a galactic war. Commander Reed, the Galactic Council representatives are waiting for you, said the voice of his assistant through the speaker. Jack fixed his uniform and took a deep breath. Send them in. The door slid open with a soft hiss. 3 aliens entered the room. The tallest one was Ambassador Trell, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms and eyes that changed color with his mood. Currently they glowed a nervous yellow. Commander Reed, thank you for meeting us on such short notice, said Trell, bowing slightly. Please, sit down, Jack said, pointing to the chairs across from his desk. Trell sat down, his companions following. The second visitor was General Vorax, a reptilian alien with scales that reflected light like metal. The third was Diplomat Mira, who looked almost human except for her silver skin and completely black eyes. We face a serious problem, Trell said. His eyes shifted to a dark orange. The Void Collective has taken 3 more systems in the past week. Jack nodded. The Void Collective was a mysterious species that had appeared 6 months ago from unknown space. They used strange fighting methods that confused the Galactic Defense Forces. How many planets have they taken now? Jack asked. 27, General Vorax answered, his voice deep and rumbling. They should not be winning. Our ships are better. Our weapons are stronger. But they keep defeating us. Jack turned to his computer and pulled up the latest reports. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking the conquered systems. The pattern was clear to him, though he doubted the aliens could see it. They're using old human tactics, Jack said quietly. What do you mean? Asked Diplomat Mira, leaning forward. Hit and run. Targeting supply lines instead of military bases. Psychological warfare. Jack pointed to different areas on the map. These aren't random attacks. They're following a pattern that Earth generals used centuries ago. The three aliens exchanged worried looks. That is why we are here, Trell said. The Council is asking for human help. Jack raised his eyebrows. The ban has been in place for 2 centuries. The Council was very clear that humans were too dangerous to participate in galactic conflicts. Times change, Vorax growled. The Void Collective does not follow normal battle rules. They attack civilian targets, they use dirty tricks. Like humans did, Jack stated. The room fell silent. Jack stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Do you know why the ban was put in place? He asked without turning around. The Earth solution, Mira said softly. The stories say humans ended the last great war in a way that horrified the galaxy. Jack nodded. My great-grandfather never talked about what they did, but it ended a war that had been going on for 30 years. The galaxy decided humans were too unpredictable, too willing to cross lines that other species wouldn't. And yet here we are, Trell said, asking for that same unpredictability. Jack turned around. What exactly are you asking for, Ambassador? The Council will vote tomorrow on temporarily lifting the ban. They want you to lead a human advisory team, but only to give advice, no direct fighting. Jack sat back down at his desk. He opened his drawer and pulled out an old, worn book. The aliens watched curiously as he flipped through the pages. This is The Art of War by Sun Tzu, Jack explained. A human military text written over 3,000 years ago. It says, all warfare is based on deception. The Void Collective understands this. The Galactic Defense Forces do not. Will you help us, Commander Reed? Mira asked. Before Jack could answer, his computer beeped with an urgent message. He opened it and frowned. The Void Collective just attacked Proxima Station. That's deep in human territory, Jack said, standing up quickly. They've never attacked human worlds before. The ban works both ways, Vorax said. They know humans cannot fight back. Jack's face hardened. They're testing the boundaries. If the Council lifts the ban, I want more than an advisory role. That would be difficult to approve, Trell said, his eyes now dark blue with worry. Then the Council needs to understand what they're asking for, Jack replied. Human warfare isn't just about tactics or technology. It's about a mindset that your species have never fully understood. Jack walked to a wall display and pressed a button. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a small storage area. Inside was an old uniform, different from the ceremonial one he wore now. This one was designed for combat, with armor plates and utility pouches. Next to it hung a strange-looking helmet with a dark visor. My great-grandfather's combat gear, Jack explained. He kept it as a reminder of what humans were capable of. The aliens stared at the armor with a mixture of curiosity and unease. There's an old human saying, Jack continued. Let sleeping dogs lie. For 200 years, the galaxy has been content to let humans sleep. Now, you want to wake us up. We need your help, Trell said simply. The Council will vote tomorrow, but I wanted to know if you would accept the position if offered. Jack closed the panel and returned to his desk. He opened the metal box and took out a small silver star attached to a ribbon. This was given to my great-grandfather for his role in the Earth solution. Do you know what he told me when I was a child? He said, this isn't for bravery, it's for being willing to do what no one else would. Jack put the medal back in the box. If the Council lifts the ban, I will help. But they need to know what they're asking for. Humans don't fight like other species. We don't have the same limits. Trell nodded slowly. I will tell them your conditions. As the alien stood to leave, Jack's computer beeped again. Another urgent message. The Void Collective just destroyed Proxima Station, Jack said, his voice tight. 5,000 human colonists, no survivors. The aliens froze. Jack looked up from his screen, his eyes cold. Tell the Council they have my answer. It's time the galaxy remembered why they banned us in the first place. After the aliens left, Jack returned to the window. The stars seemed colder now. 200 years of peace was about to end. He wondered if the galaxy was ready for what was coming. Humans had been banned from galactic wars for good reasons. Now, those reasons were about to become clear again. 3 days after the destruction of Proxima Station, Jack Reed stood in a large meeting room aboard the Galactic Council's flagship. The circular table in the center held representatives from 12 different species. All eyes were on him as he finished his presentation. And that's why the Void Collective's attacks have been successful despite your technological advantages, Jack said, turning off the holographic display. They're using psychological warfare. They want you afraid. Admiral Krex, a tall, insect-like being with forearms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles in frustration. This makes no sense. War's about strength and numbers. The stronger force wins. Jack shook his head. Not always. Earth history is full of examples where the weaker side won because they fought smarter, not harder. The Galactic Council had voted to partially lift the ban. Humans could now advise alien forces but still couldn't fight directly. Jack had been appointed as the chief human advisor, much to the discomfort of many council members. What do you suggest we do, Commander Reed? Asked Council Leader Orza, an elderly being with pale blue skin and white hair that seemed to float around her head. Jack walked around the table, looking at each representative. First, stop thinking like a traditional military. The Void Collective isn't attacking your strongest points. They're hitting where you're weak and vulnerable. He pointed to the star map floating above the table. See these supply routes? They've cut off 3 major military bases from getting fuel and food. Your ships are powerful, but they can't fight if they can't move or if their crews are hungry. Admiral Krex stood up angrily. This is dishonorable. In proper warfare, armies face each other directly. The Void Collective doesn't care about your honor, Jack replied calmly. They care about winning. The room fell silent. Jack could feel the tension in the air. These beings had fought wars for thousands of years with strict rules and traditions. The idea of fighting differently was alien to them. Ironically, a soft voice spoke from the corner of the room. Perhaps we should listen to the human, all. Heads turned to Admiral Trax, an older military leader with gray skin and sad eyes. He was known for his experience in the last major galactic conflict. I was there when the Earth solution ended the Great War, Trax said quietly. I saw what humans can do when pushed too far. If Commander Reed says the Void Collective is using human tactics, we should pay attention. Jack nodded gratefully to the old admiral. At least someone understood the gravity of the situation. What do you propose, Commander? Council Leader Orza asked again. Form smaller, faster strike teams instead of large battle groups, Jack said. Hit their supply lines the same way they're hitting yours. Use deception. Make them think you're attacking one place while you're really targeting another. Admiral, Krex's antenna twitched in disgust. Trickery and lies. This is not how honorable species conduct war. Would you rather be honorable or survive? Jack asked bluntly. Before Krex could respond, the room's emergency lights flashed red. A communications officer rushed in. The Void Collective has launched simultaneous attacks on 3 more systems, the officer reported. They're using a new weapon that disables our ship's shields. Jack turned to the council members. They're adapting faster than you. This is what humans do in war. We change tactics, we innovate, we find weaknesses and exploit them. Council Leader Orza stood. Admiral Trax, take Commander Reed and implement his suggestions with your fleet. Admiral Krex, secure the core systems. With our traditional forces, we will try both approaches. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Trax approached Jack. Walk with me, Commander, the old admiral said. They left the council chamber and moved to a quiet observation deck. Through the massive window, they could see ships of various designs coming and going from the station. You didn't tell them everything. In there, Trax said, his voice low. About what you suspect? Jack looked at the admiral with surprise. What do you mean? I've studied human warfare since the ban, Trax admitted. The Void Collective isn't just using human tactics. They're using them too well. as if they know human military thinking from the inside. Jack nodded slowly. I've had the same thought. The attack on Proxima Station wasn't random. It was personal. A message. You think humans are helping them, Trax said. It wasn't a question. I think it's possible, Jack replied. Not all humans agreed with the ban. Some thought it was shameful to be excluded from galactic affairs. Trax turned to face Jack fully. If you're right, this becomes even more dangerous. The Council partially lifted the ban to get human help against the Void Collective. If they discover humans might be on both sides, they'll reinstate the ban immediately and we'll lose this war, Jack finished. What are you going to do? Trax asked. Jack stared out at the stars. First, I'm going to help you implement the strategies I suggested. Then I need to find proof of human involvement with the Void Collective. And if you find it, then I'll need to deal with it quietly, Jack said. For 200 years, humans have lived peacefully in the galaxy. I won't let a few traitors ruin that. Trax nodded. I'll help you. Not all of us fear humans, Commander Reed. Some of us remember that before the Earth solution, humans fought to protect others as often as they fought for themselves. Jack smiled slightly. Thank you, Admiral. Their conversation was interrupted by another alarm. Jack's personal communicator beeped urgently. He checked the message and his face darkened. What is it? Trax asked. The Void Collective just hit New Terra Colony, Jack said, his voice tight with anger. Second human target in a week. Casualties? Unknown yet. But they left something behind. This time. Jack showed Trax the image on his communicator, a symbol burned into the ground of the colony's main plaza. Trax looked confused. What does it mean? It's an ancient human military symbol, Jack explained. It means traitor. So you were right, Trax said quietly. Jack nodded, his face grim. Humans are helping the Void Collective, and they're sending me a message. What will you do now? Jack turned from the window, determination in his eyes. What humans do best, Admiral, adapt and overcome. As they walked toward the hangar bay where Trax's ship waited, Jack knew the galaxy was about to learn why humans had been banned from warfare. Not because they were evil, but because when pushed, there were no limits to what they would do to win. And somewhere out there, other humans had forgotten what lines should never be crossed. 2 weeks after the attack on New Terra, Jack Reed stood in front of 30 alien officers inside the battlecruiser Stellar Dawn. Each officer represented a different species in the Galactic Defense Forces. Some looked skeptical, others curious, and a few openly hostile. The first rule of human warfare, Jack said, pacing across the front of the room, is that there are no rules. A murmur of disapproval spread through the audience. A tall, purple-skinned officer stood up. This goes against everything we believe, he said. War has codes, honor, structure. Jack nodded. And that's why you're losing. The Void Collective doesn't care about your codes or your honor. In the 2 weeks since Jack had started advising Admiral Trax's fleet, they had managed to slow the Void Collective's advance. But they hadn't stopped it. 5 more systems had fallen, though now the enemy was paying a higher price for each victory. Today we're going to talk about something humans call psychological warfare, Jack continued. Winning the battle in your enemy's mind before firing a single shot. Brought up images on the large screen behind him. They showed damaged Void Collective ships retreating from a recent battle. This looks like a victory for us, Jack said. But look closer. He zoomed in on one of the enemy ships. Small pods were launching from its side. While you were celebrating, pushing them back, they were dropping stealth units onto the planet below. By the time you realized what happened, they had already taken control of the main communications tower. The entire planet surrendered without a ground battle. The room fell silent. Jack could see the realization sinking in. The Void Collective understands that war happens here. Jack tapped his temple. As much as it happens on the battlefield. Admiral Trax stood from his seat in the back. Commander Reed is right. Our traditional tactics aren't working. We need to learn new ways to fight. Jack nodded gratefully to the Admiral. Over the past 2 weeks, Trax had become his strongest ally. The old admiral understood what was at stake better than anyone. "I've divided you into 5 teams," Jack said. "Each team will learn different human warfare techniques: deception, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, intelligence gathering, and contingency planning." "Contingency planning?" asked a small, bird-like officer. "We already have backup plans." "Not like this," Jack replied. "Humans plan for failure in ways your military doesn't understand. We assume everything will go wrong and prepare accordingly." The training session lasted 8 hours. By the end, most of the officers looked overwhelmed. A few seemed excited by the new ideas. Others remained skeptical. As the room emptied, Admiral Trax approached Jack. "You." "Push them hard," Trax observed. "We don't have time for gentle teaching," Jack replied. "The Void Collective is getting stronger, and I'm more convinced than ever that humans are helping them." Trax lowered his voice. "The Council is concerned about your methods. Admiral Krex has filed a formal complaint." Jack wasn't surprised. Krex had opposed human involvement from the beginning. "Has his fleet had any successes against the Void Collective?" Jack asked. "No," Trax admitted. "They've lost 2 more battle groups using traditional tactics." Jack's communicator beeped. He checked the message and frowned. "What is it?" Trax asked. "I need to show you something," Jack said. "In private." They walked to Jack's quarters. Inside, Jack activated a security field that blocked any listening devices. "My contacts found this," Jack said, bringing up a video on his personal screen. The video showed a human woman in a strange uniform addressing a group of Void Collective soldiers. She was explaining battle plans, pointing to maps of Galactic Defense Forces positions. "Who is she?" Trax asked. "Her name is Maria Reed," Jack said quietly. "My sister." Trax's eyes widened. "Your own blood relative is helping the enemy?" Jack nodded, his face tight with anger and pain. "We haven't spoken in 15 years. She always believed humans should have rejected the ban by force. She thought we had become weak living under alien rules." "Did you know she was involved with the Void Collective?" "No," Jack said. "I thought she had settled on a frontier colony. Now I understand why they attacked Proxima Station and New Terra. They were sending me a message." "What will you do?" Trax asked. Before Jack could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. The intercom crackled. "Admiral Trax to the bridge. Emergency situation." They rushed to the bridge. Officers were running between stations, shouting orders. "Report!" Trax commanded. "The Void Collective has launched a major offensive," a communications officer reported. "They're hitting Freedom Colony. It's a direct attack on a human settlement, sir." Jack froze. Freedom Colony was home to over 1 million human civilians. It was also where he had grown up. "This is too much of a coincidence," Jack said to Trax. "They're targeting my home world. Maria is making this personal." Trax turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for Freedom Colony, maximum speed." "Sir," the weapons officer called out, "Council protocols state we can't engage directly to defend human colonies. The ban is only partially lifted." Jack slammed his fist on a console. 1 million humans live there. Are you going to let them die because of politics? The bridge fell silent. All eyes turned to Admiral Trax. "The Void Collective has changed the rules of engagement," Trax said finally. "We will defend Freedom Colony." "Admiral," the first officer said hesitantly, "that would directly violate Council orders." "I've fought in 3 galactic wars," Trax replied. "I know what's at stake here. If Freedom Colony falls, the Void Collective will grow stronger. And more importantly, it's the right thing to do." Jack looked at the Admiral with new respect. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a direct message from the Void Collective fleet. They're asking to speak with Commander Reed specifically." Jack and Trax exchanged glances. "Put it on screen," Trax ordered. The main view screen flickered to life. Maria Reed's face appeared, looking so similar to Jack that several officers gasped. "Hello, brother," she said, smiling coldly. "Surprised to see me?" "Why are you doing this, Maria?" Jack asked, his voice steady despite his anger. To show the galaxy what humans are truly capable of, she replied. For 200 years we've been treated as dangerous animals, kept on a leash. It's time to remind everyone why they feared us. By helping aliens attack human colonies? You're killing your own people. Maria's smile faded. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. The Earth solution taught us that. The Earth solution was a mistake, Jack said. A desperate action in desperate times. It was our finest hour, Maria countered. When humans showed the galaxy what we're willing to do to win. She leaned closer to the screen. I'm giving you a choice, Jack. Join us, or watch Freedom Colony burn. Jack straightened his shoulders. You know my answer. Then you'll need to stop me yourself, Maria said. But that would mean breaking the ban completely, wouldn't it? Are you willing to do that, brother? Are you willing to become what the galaxy fears? The screen went dark. Jack turned to Trax, his decision already made. I need a ship, he said, and I need volunteers who understand what they're getting into. You'll be violating the ban, Trax warned. The Council will never forgive that. Jack's eyes hardened. Some lines have to be crossed, this is one of them. The ban on human warfare was about to be broken, and the galaxy would remember why it had been created in the first place. The scout ship Shadowfall moved silently through space, its advanced stealth systems hiding it from enemy sensors. Inside the small bridge, Jack Reed sat in the captain's chair, surrounded by his hand-picked crew of 5 humans. Status report, Jack said, his voice low and tense. We're approaching Freedom Colony, replied Tom, the navigation officer. Long-range scanners show 7 Void collective warships in orbit. They've already landed ground forces. It had been 3 days since Jack broke the ban completely. Admiral Trax had given him a small stealth vessel and turned a blind eye as Jack recruited former military personnel who had been living quietly throughout the galaxy. Each volunteer knew they were risking everything. Any word from Admiral Trax's fleet? Asked Lisa, the communications specialist. They're engaged with the main Void collective force 2 systems away, Jack replied. It's a diversion. My sister knew exactly what she was doing when she split their forces. Jack studied the tactical display. Freedom Colony's defenses were crumbling. They had never been built to withstand a full military assault. The colony had always relied on the ban for protection. No one attacked human worlds because humans couldn't fight back. Time to show them why humans were banned from warfare, Jack said. Everyone remember the plan? His small crew nodded. All of them were veterans who had kept their skills sharp despite years of peace. Like Jack, they had been waiting for this day, though none of them would admit it. Tom, take us in. Lisa, jam their communications. Ben, prepare the drop pods. The Shadowfall accelerated toward Freedom Colony, still hidden by its stealth systems. As they approached the planet, Jack felt a familiar calm settle over him. This was what humans were made for. The desperate moments when everything hung in the balance. Entering atmosphere in 30 seconds, Tom announced. Jack stood and moved to the equipment locker. Inside were 6 sets of combat armor, far more advanced than anything the Galactic Defense Forces used. These were human designs developed in secret over decades despite the ban. Suit up, Jack ordered. The armor enclosed each human like a second skin, enhancing strength, speed, and reflexes. The helmets connected to a shared battle network, allowing each team member to see through the other's eyes. Drop pods ready, Ben reported. Launch, Jack commanded. 6 pods shot from the Shadowfall toward different parts of the colony. Jack's pod plummeted through the atmosphere, the heat shield glowing red as it descended. Inside, Jack checked his weapons one last time. The pod crashed into the central plaza of Freedom Colony. Before the dust settled, Jack was out, weapon raised. Through his team's shared vision, he could see they had all landed safely at their designated targets. Move out, Jack ordered through the secure comlink. Remember, we need to draw attention, away from the civilians. Jack moved through the familiar streets of his childhood home, now a battleground. The Void collective soldiers were tall, 4-armed beings with bone-white skin. They turned toward him in surprise as he approached. What? happened next was recorded by the colony's security systems and broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time in 200 years, humans went to war. Jack moved with inhuman speed, his enhanced armor making him faster and stronger than any natural being. His weapons fired with perfect accuracy, disabling the enemy soldiers without killing them. He didn't need to kill, he just needed them to focus on him instead of the civilians. Across the colony, his 5 team members were doing the same. Through their shared neural link, they coordinated perfectly, each one covering the other's blind spots, setting up ambushes, and leading the enemy into traps. Within an hour, nearly half the Void Collective ground forces had been neutralized, and not a single human soldier had been injured. The efficiency was terrifying to watch. This wasn't the honorable, straightforward combat the galaxy was used to. This was something else, calculated, precise, and utterly merciless in its execution. The colony's communication center had been the first target Jack's team secured. Now he stood inside it, watching the battle unfold on multiple screens. "Sir," Lisa called from a nearby console, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy command ship." "Put it through," Jack said. Maria's face appeared on the main screen. She looked surprised but not upset. "So you did it," she said. "You broke the ban. How does it feel to be a real human again, brother?" "This isn't about being human," Jack replied. "It's about protecting innocent people." Maria laughed. "Look at what you've done in just 1 hour. 6 humans against hundreds of Void soldiers, and you're winning. Do you understand now why I did this? The galaxy needs to remember what we're capable of." "You attacked human colonies," Jack said, his voice hard. "You killed thousands of our own people." "I needed to push you far enough," Maria explained. "I needed the galaxy to see why they feared us, and now they're watching. Every security feed from Freedom Colony is being broadcast across galactic channels. They're all seeing what humans can do in battle." Jack realized with growing horror that this had been her plan all along. She had wanted him to break the ban publicly, to show the galaxy why humans had been restricted for 2 centuries. "The Void Collective ships are pulling back," Ben reported from another console. "They're retreating from orbit. They've served their purpose," Maria said. "They helped me show the truth." "What truth?" Jack demanded. "That the ban wasn't to protect the galaxy from humans," Maria replied. "It was to protect humans from ourselves." The screen went dark as she cut the transmission. Jack turned to the tactical display. The enemy forces were indeed retreating, but something else was happening. Several Galactic Council ships were entering the system, not Admiral Trax's fleet, but ships directly from the Council itself. "Sir," Lisa said, her voice tight with concern, "we're receiving a message from the Council ships. They're ordering us to stand down and surrender immediately." Jack had expected this. Breaking the ban had consequences. "Tell the team to complete the evacuation of civilians, then meet at the extraction point," Jack ordered. "We're not surrendering." "What about the Council?" Lisa asked. "They've just seen what 6 humans can do in battle," Jack replied. "Let's show them what we can do when we're trying to escape." As the evacuation finished, and Jack's team prepared to leave Freedom Colony, news of what had happened was spreading across the galaxy. The footage of humans in combat had been seen by billions. Some watched in horror, others in awe, but all with the same realization. The ban had existed for a reason. Human warfare wasn't just about technology or brutality. It was about something deeper. A willingness to do whatever was necessary. A capacity for unconventional thinking that other species lacked. And now, for better or worse, that capacity had been unleashed again. As Jack's team boarded their ship and prepared to run the Council's blockade, he knew the galaxy would never be the same. The human element had returned to warfare, and nothing could put it back in the box. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy. Representatives from over 50 species filled the circular chamber, their voices a mix of anger, fear, and confusion. At the center stood Jack Reed, alone and unafraid. 1 month had passed since the battle at Freedom Colony. 1 month since humans had broken the ban and reminded the galaxy why they had been feared for so long. 1 month of chaos as the Void Collective continued its advance. though now more cautiously. "Commander Reed," said Council Leader Orza, her voice carrying through the hall, "you stand accused of violating the most sacred law of our galactic community. How do you plead?" Jack looked around the room, meeting the eyes of various council members. Some looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "I did what was necessary to save lives," Jack replied simply. "I would do it again." A murmur ran through the crowd. Admiral Track stood from his seat and approached the center. "If I may speak, Council Leader," Track said. Orza nodded, and the old admiral continued. "I witnessed Commander Reed's actions firsthand. Yes, he broke the ban, but he also saved an entire colony of civilians who would have died otherwise." "The ban exists for a reason," countered Admiral Krex, stepping forward. "We all saw the footage from Freedom Colony. 6 humans defeated an army. This is why humans were banned from warfare. They are too dangerous. And yet you need us now," Jack said. "The Void Collective continues to gain ground. Your conventional forces can't stop them." The council chamber fell silent. It was the uncomfortable truth no one wanted to acknowledge. "There is also the matter of the Void Collective leadership," Admiral Trax added. "Commander Reed's sister, Maria Reed, has been confirmed as their primary military advisor. Humans are already involved in this war, whether we acknowledge it or not." Council Leader Orza sighed heavily. "This places us in an impossible position." Jack stepped forward. "There is another option, the Earth solution." The words sent a shock through the room. Many council members stood in protest, shouting their objections. "You would dare suggest such a thing?" Krex demanded. "The Earth solution is what led to the ban in the first place." Jack held up his hands for silence. "I don't think any of you actually understand what the Earth solution was. You've heard stories, rumors, myths, but few of you know the truth." He took a small data crystal from his pocket and inserted it into the central console. A holographic image appeared above them, an old video recording. "This is my great-grandfather," Jack explained as the image of an elderly human in military uniform came into focus. "General James Reed, the architect of the Earth solution. This recording was made shortly before his death, intended to be revealed only when necessary." The aged face of James Reed looked out at them across 2 centuries. His voice was strong despite his years. "If you're watching this," the recording began, "then humans have once again been called to war. The galaxy has likely forgotten or misunderstood what the Earth solution truly was." The recording continued, explaining the truth of what had happened 200 years ago. As the explanation unfolded, the council members' expressions changed, from fear to surprise to understanding. "The Earth solution wasn't a superweapon," Jack said as the recording ended. "It wasn't an act of brutality or genocide as some myths claim. It was a strategy that required a terrible moral choice, one that ended the war but at a cost to humanity's soul." "A calculated sacrifice," Admiral Trax said softly. "Not of the enemy, but of your own principles." Jack nodded. "Humans were banned from warfare not because we were too violent, but because we were willing to cross lines that other species wouldn't. The galaxy feared what that meant." Council Leader Orza stood and approached Jack. "And now your sister wishes to use this approach with the Void Collective?" "Yes," Jack confirmed. "But there's a difference. The original Earth solution was a last resort, used only when all other options had failed. Maria wants to make it the first option. She wants to prove humans are superior." "And what do you want, Commander Reed?" Orza asked. Jack looked around the chamber. "I want to show there's another way. Humans aren't just good at war, we're good at ending wars. The same creativity, the same willingness to try unconventional approaches can be used for peace as well as conflict." He turned to the central display and brought up tactical information about the Void Collective. "For the past month, my team has been gathering intelligence. We've learned that the Void Collective is not a natural alliance. Many of their member species were forced to join through conquest or intimidation. If we offer them a way out, protection, independence, we can Fracture the collective from within, Admiral Kreck scoffed. Diplomacy. Now? After they've conquered dozens of worlds? Not just diplomacy, Jack replied. A combination of targeted military strikes and diplomatic outreach. Human warfare isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when not to fight, when to use other means to achieve victory. The council debated for hours. Finally, Council Leader Orza called for silence. We have reached a decision, she announced. The ban on human warfare will be modified, not lifted. Humans will be permitted to form a special task force, under Commander Reed's leadership, to address the Void Collective threat. This task force will have the authority to use both military and diplomatic means. She turned to Jack. However, there will be oversight. Admiral Trax will serve as the Council's representative to ensure the Earth solution, in its most extreme form, is not implemented without Council approval. Jack nodded. Acceptable. Furthermore, Orza continued, once this crisis is resolved, humans will take on a new role in galactic society, not as warriors, but as teachers of conflict resolution. Your unique perspective on warfare makes you valuable not just in fighting wars, but in preventing them. As the council session ended, Admiral Trax approached Jack. You knew this would happen, didn't you? Trax asked. From the moment your sister revealed herself, you've been working toward this outcome. Jack smiled slightly. Humans are good at strategy, Admiral. Not just battlefield strategy, but long-term thinking. My sister wanted to show why humans were feared. I wanted to show why we're needed. And the Earth solution? The real one? Trax asked quietly. Will remain a last resort, Jack assured him. The galaxy doesn't need more destructive power. It needs a new understanding of conflict itself. As they walked from the council chamber, news arrived of another Void Collective attack. But this time, instead of fear, Jack felt hope. The galaxy had finally begun to understand why humans had been banned from warfare, not to protect others from humans, but to protect the galaxy from what war truly was when all limits were removed. Now, with that understanding, perhaps they could build something better. Not just victory, but a lasting peace that acknowledged the darker truth of conflict while striving for something more.